from 7 to 8, and I'll be hosting a discussion titled The Health Impacts of Climate Change with 3 Colorado medical doctors who will discuss their frontline experience with patients in Colorado. So you'll be getting an invitation online to sign up for it, and hope to see you there.
That's good.
Great, thank you, Amy. Jean, did you want to mention the Colorado Ceasefire event? I did email Beth and Cameron to see if we could get it out to membership, but I thought maybe you'd want to say something to LAC too. Oh, you're on mute, Jean.
Jean, you're still on mute.
There I got it.
There you go.
Okay. Toby, we have had enough, and they're putting it on. It's free. Includes people like Jason Crow and Evie Hudak, Lorena Garcia, and it's mostly about gun violence. Let me try to find the place. I know it says someplace on here when it is. That would be good to include. Sunday, May 23rd at 6 p.m. And you are RSVP, and there's a link to the whole thing. They make a real point of it's not a fundraiser, and they're not campaigning to elect candidates. Our goal is to produce hope and change. And it's a lot of information about gun violence and what we're trying to do about it. So I think it's as I said to Andrea, we encourage them to come to our events, and I think it'd be nice if we showed up at their events. So we're going to try and get people to go to that or to attend it by Zoom or whatever.
Go ahead, Tony.
I don't see Jeanette Hillary. Do you?
Jeanette won't be here today.
Okay, and then Amy, I see Amy. I'm just wondering about SB 200 and if we're going to be talking about it during the bill.
I'm the one who was following that.
Okay.
And I think I was going to check with Ann Sutton, who lives in Faith Winter's district, because the environmentalists are very firm about wanting this to pass as is. And that's the one that Jared Polis is threatening to veto. Now, what I would describe as the more sensible part of his veto, perhaps, would be the Air Quality Control Board being the one in charge, because the Air Quality Control Board has a couple of whistleblowers who are saying that they covered up and did not enforce some previous things that should have been regulated. And I'm not sure how fast the governor can replace that board. It's kind of like our situation at the national level with the postmaster to Joy. And so that actually might be a legitimate concern, that you're ordering a board to do something that they're not going to do.
Well, my question is, if we're going to discuss it, then I can wait, but the other, if we're not going to discuss it, then should we be writing to the government?
Right. The bill is on the floor today for a vote. I don't remember if it's a second reading or third reading. Gaithia, we need to clarify terms here. The whistleblowers were in the Air Pollution Control Division, which is under the AQCC. And I think that's an important, those are career employees. So you can't just fire them offhand. Now, I guess the governor could reappoint members of the AQCC, which I assume is an appointed board.
Right.
That's a different, and the Attorney General has joined the investigation team the last announcement I saw was he has put out a bid for a third-party legal team to do a Colorado-based investigation. He's not going to do it out of his office. He wants it, separate. But the EPA has the authority to investigate.
Right.
This is Beth.
I think we want the bill and we want it enforceable. And I think that is a message we should be giving the governor.
Yes, absolutely. It's a good bill.
Can this is Beth. May I jump in for a quick second?
Sure.
Thank you. I'm just wondering if anybody's heard if that investigation is expanding to water quality. I've heard rumors.
Oh, I don't know that unless.
That's interesting too.
Unless Jeanette Hillary knows.
Okay, if anybody hears, can you shoot me an email? Yeah. Thanks a million. We do have an observer overseeing this investigation, and if it expands, I would like to appoint other observers. And if anyone is interested in observing this investigation, of course, we can use more than one. Thank you.
Thanks, Beth. Beth, while you have the floor, did you have any other announcements or anything that we should be aware of before we get into a bill discussion?
Oh, thank you, Andrea. Really, I'd just like to encourage you all to attend convention if you haven't already registered. And I'd like to tell you a little bit about our keynote speaker. His name is Jargal Dambadarja. He is a Mongolian media star and overseer of the government watchdog.
I'd say heartthrob in Mongolia.
Okay, yeah, that's fair. And he was very much involved in Mongolia's peaceful revolution to democracy from communism about 30 years ago. So, and Tony, what's interesting, you know how I had trouble getting a hold of Jargal?
Okay.
It's because he was being pressured to run for president.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and he just politely declined the other day. So anyway, I'm sure you all know that Mongolia is a democratic nation wedged between our two largest communist countries. And he should have some very interesting things to say. And I sure hope you enjoy it. And that's all. Thank you. Don't hesitate to call or email.
Beth, I kind of had a question. If I looked at the Zoom calendar, right, I wanted to mention the fact that because the adjournment date for the General Assembly is pushed back from what it would have regularly been had they not done a temporary adjournment, we've also decided to push back our legislative wrap up. It won't be part of convention. We're going to be doing that later in the month. And Beth, my question for you was that I had it on my calendar for June 16th, but as I was getting into Zoom this morning, I thought I saw it on the Zoom calendar for June 23rd. So I just wanted to clarify if actually both work for me. And I don't know if there's preferences or reasons we should consider one over another, but just wanted to make sure everybody was on the same page and that everybody knew the date that we were targeting for that.
Yeah, appreciate that. It doesn't matter to me. I will leave it up to you as to which you feel it is best and most convenient to you. So yeah, I have it on the calendar for the 16th, but thank you for pointing out that discrepancy.
I think that's what I saw. I just quickly saw as I was logging in and I was running a bit behind. So we might want to double check, but I am pretty sure that's what I saw. Tony, I don't know if you have preferences. My original thinking was knowing that they can't meet beyond the 12th. On the 16th, we could, we would have a few days to kind of test things, at least a few days if they adjourn earlier than more. But, and if we need to coordinate more on the dates, apart from
the only thing, the National Council starts the 24th, if that makes a difference.
Okay, well, I'm fine to go ahead with the 16th if there are no big logistical reasons why we shouldn't do that. So we had, we'd plan to do this as a webinar format like we've been doing with the, the various webinars that have taken place, over the course of the past year. So, similar kind of thing. we're set to begin at 5:30, I believe, and we'll send out more information, but I did just want to flag that to make sure everybody knew what was happening there. I have not heard a specific adjournment date. June 12th, as I mentioned, is the last date that they can meet. There was some talk about maybe trying to wrap things up by the end of the month. But I've also heard some concern expressed about some of the big complicated bills that have been introduced late in the session that, you know, might make that impossible. So as far as I have heard, I think it's still an unknown. I don't know if others have heard other things. I would love to hear your thoughts if any information has come to you or if it does, and I'll share out as well. But anyway, just wanted to mention that.
I think I'm hearing that the end of May is a little unrealistic. So we might plan to have it go into June. And is there any more talk about the special session?
I've heard it talked about in vague terms. I think that they have always said that they felt like they were going to need to do more budget work, you know, as the stimulus money comes in. So I think it seems to be a consideration for people. I haven't heard anything as far as a time frame, but it definitely seems to be something people are talking about. All right, well, with that, I didn't mean to cut short discussion on Senate Bill 200. If we are covering that as part of our overall environment discussion, if we can hold on that, Carol, I know you have a scheduling conflict that is coming up pretty soon. So if we could maybe jump to healthcare to discuss your bills, and then we can just kind of go ahead and pick up with our list.
Thank you, Andrea. Yes, so just by quick summary, there's not a huge amount of updates at the moment in time. Healthcare bills on the profile are 11. 2 of them have been signed by the governor. And there's some interesting things here at the end, and I'm just reflecting on 3 of these. Senate Bill 175, the Prescription Drug Affordability Review Board, started, of course, in the Senate as a Senate bill and was a challenging testimony and discussion and amendments, but it passed. And therefore, I think the supporters believe that it will have an easier time in the House, and it is scheduled for the first House committee on the 19th at 1:30 p.m. So I think that's a really good thing that's gotten through. It was a challenge. And then the next one that I'm reflecting on is another interesting one. These all sort of end up being approaches to pharmaceutical cost reduction, I guess I'll say. House Bill 1237, the Competitive Pharmacy Benefits Manager Marketplace, is an interesting bill that relates to the state health insurance benefit plan. And over the years, one of the efforts to reduce costs in healthcare was to go after the insurance companies that basically have the cherry picking lucrative state health employees benefit plan and try to get them to do some things for the rest of the citizenry if they're going to get that lucrative contract. But this particular one is to try to control costs in the state health benefit plan, which would then control costs in the general fund, which funds some of those benefits. And so they came up with this reverse auction tool that's been used in other states, even by mandate in other states, because it's so successful in reducing costs in the state expenses. So this one remarkably has gone through with terrific bipartisan support, and it's in its final Senate Committee of the Whole hearing Monday at 10 a.m. And so it will pass. And to me, that's interesting. And I think it's good. I mean, technically it affects a relatively small number of people, but overall it could be a model. And then the final one that I want to reflect on is the one that is still getting quite a bit of press and attention, which is essentially the standardized health benefit plan, the Colorado option, the public option, if you will, House Bill 1232. Now, this one went through a major strike below, and the whole plan that was introduced this year was changed, where the insurance companies were being asked to reduce premiums by 10% first year, 10% second year. Let the market deal with some requirements for reduction. And that strike below occurred, and it's a new type of bill entirely, where basically, again, this is always just an option. Nobody is requiring government mandated health insurance. It's just an option on the health exchange, the Colorado Health Benefit Exchange, Connect for Health Colorado. It would be an option, but it would have regulation and oversight on some of the costs of those premiums. So this one is getting press on all different sides. Somebody wrote into the Aurora Sentinel, I think a home daycare provider, and said, this is the only way I could possibly buy health insurance is if somebody will offer on the exchange something more realistic to a self-employed individual with a modest income. In other words, these are not Medicaid people. These are your middle-class people, but not wealthy. And another very interesting, and I would say I didn't read it in great detail, but Wellington Webb decided to weigh in on this against it. So there's still a lot of press going on. And the bill overall in all forms is consistent with league position nationally to support any kind of triple aim, quality access, and affordable health care. So we'll continue to follow that. Don't know what's going to happen. I would suspect, if anything, that will be a start again. We're sort of moving towards a solution here, and we may not be getting there on that one. But other than that, frankly, all of the other bills on the roster of the healthcare profile appear to be doing well, or even better than might have been anticipated.
Oh, okay, fantastic. Well, thank you, Carol, for all that information. Does anyone have questions or discussion around that? All right, well, feel free to chime in as always. Amy, I see that you raised a question about the sound. The sound is coming through fine for me. I don't know if others are having issues. It might be on your end, Amy. I'm not sure what might be happening.
Okay, thank you for clarifying.
Hopefully, I don't know. I feel like I've been seeing lots of Zoom problems over the last couple of days. The system is overloaded. Okay, well, thank you, Carol. That all sounds fantastic. I believe last time we started at the bottom of our list, so to kind of try and balance out the wait time for people, let's go ahead and hop up to the top of our profile list. Kate Ward is not here to talk about children's issues, but I did want to just briefly mention to everyone that she and I had a conversation about her following the new bill that was introduced, I want to say last week, and the number is escaping me. I need to look it up. 1304. This was just, it's significant in the sense that it would establish a Department of Early Childhood. So it's a big structural change for state government. I don't know that Kate has had a chance to look into it significantly, but she will be doing that, and then obviously wasn't able to attend the meeting today, but I wanted everybody to be aware of it since that's a pretty big happening within children's issues. So we'll hear more about that to come, and I don't know if anyone has any comment on that at this point, but I'm sure we'll be discussing at future meetings when she rejoins us. That takes us to civil rights. Jean, did you and Rionda have some updates or some new information here?
there now. Rihanna has been following the civil rights part almost exclusively, and I haven't been keeping up with it as much as I should, so I really don't have anything to report.
Oh, no problem. And I did get an email from Rihanna. I think I believe I haven't had a chance to look at it quickly, but I believe she has some updates there, and I think is getting the updates entered into Capital Watch too. So if everyone wants to check that information either is or very soon will be up to date. And then we can pick up on that discussion next week as well. Kathy Wilson was also unable to join us today on education, but I did want to mention that the school finance bill has been introduced. I know she's got family in town this week, so I don't know that she has been able to tune into that discussion. It was in Senate Education yesterday, but I think she'll be picking up on that as well, and just kind of monitoring to, so we can have a sense of what is happening with that. And we'll pick up on that discussion when she rejoins us as well. So that takes us to elections and voting. And I know there's been some activity there. So if our elections and voting team at Gaethia, you were the first one that I am seeing on my screen. I don't know if Celeste has had an opportunity to join us, or no, Linda wasn't going to make it today. Peggy wasn't going to make it today.
Now, Peggy and Linda both couldn't make it, and Celeste is supposed to be in and out depending on her success at cleaning the classroom out where she teaches. She has to vacate it over the summer for renovations or something. So the big news for our ranked choice instant runoff voting bill, HB 211071, is that it was heard in the Senate State Military and Veterans Affairs Committee, and there was a significant objection this time, which didn't happen in the House, from the Secretary of State's office, which is concerned about taking that money out of their budget and saying that to do so, they would need to raise fees on businesses. And of course, that's a very unpopular idea. So that has now been referred to the Finance Committee. And I sent a letter into Senator Fenberg, but haven't heard back as to what the scheduling or likely amendment is on that. But we're very interested in finding out how they plan to proceed.
All right, thank you, Gaethia. And then I don't think we have communicated to LAC as oh, Tony, go ahead.
Tony, you're on mute.
So Gaethia, on the election bill, the big election bill, I read the section on recall.
Yes, you're talking about 250?
Yeah. So should I be talking about 250 or?
Go ahead. Yeah, no, I think that's I'm done.
Okay, all righty. So most of it was just technical language kinds of changes. I was hoping that there would be some more definition of when you could do a recall, but that was not the case. So I did read it, and that's my conclusion.
Well, thanks for that update, Tony. I know that's an issue that we've had our eye on for a while. So
yeah, the other thing, I was looking into that, and I don't know, is Beth still on the line? I think it's a structural issue for groups like the League that register people to vote, that if you use the last 4 digits of the Social Security number for online voting, the issue isn't whether or not the Secretary of State's office keeps that secure, although since I've had trouble with the uninsurance issue, that could be a concern. The issue really is, how does it get there? And so if you are, for example, the League, and you're switching to laptops or Chromebooks at businesses to register voters, you need to know there's no spyware on those laptops, and you need to know that the internet connection you're using is not some open public thing, or you're giving that information away before it even gets to the Secretary of State's office. And so I think that's a bigger concern than I've been able to interest anybody else in so far.
Gaethia, I am also concerned with voter information privacy protections. I served on a records committee in another life. And of course, as individuals, as league members, we, in taking positions on bills, stand on league positions. Is there a league position on cybersecurity yet?
I don't think we have anything specific.
Does Colorado or LWVUS have a position? Because of course, to take a position on a bill, we need to stand on an existing position. Not that we can't get up and say, I as an individual Maud or I as an individual Gaithia say this is a really stupid idea because it's sure. But with our league hats on, we have to have that plank to stand on.
Let me look for something. I mean, if we have something on privacy, we could use that.
I wrote something, Maud, that I'll send you that I wrote as an individual on the bill regarding disabilities, having to do with online electronic voting and limiting that as much as possible. But I didn't cite any league positions. I didn't find one. But yeah, I would be very interested, if you're interested, in forming a committee, because I think this is an up and coming issue that the league ought to have a clear position.
I think the first question is to looking to see if there is a league, either national or state league position, and now is not the time to go.
But we should look into that
looking at things. And yes, if we're registering voters, yes, we do need to be careful on that. That's not a taking a position issue. Mm-hmm. So that's.
And I know the Boulder League plans to use Chromebooks, and Chromebooks are basically a data pipeline, and it's totally controlled by Google. And Google is proving. I mean, I have a Gmail address that I'm considering changing shortly because I think Google is just overreaching in its data acquisition policies.
Jean, go ahead.
This is not exactly the same, but it's close. It has to do with reproductive choices, but the league's position says, the League of Women Voters believes public policy in a pluralistic society must affirm the constitutional right of privacy of the individual to make reproductive choices. But I don't know why we couldn't, I mean, it's still the constitutional right of privacy.
I'm sorry, Jean, where did you see that? And I totally agree, we could use that.
Under public policy on reproductive choices.
Is that in national?
In the national, yeah.
Oh.
It's an extrapolation, but hey, I do both reproductive choice and voting methods, so.
So you could do that.
Well, and Gaithia, to the point that you raised about, bringing up the concerns about, electronic voting and that sort of thing, we had broadly put that under the umbrella of being concerned about election integrity. Mm-hmm. So there were kind of maybe some broad areas that we could point to and, broad stances. But I do think that it's an issue that I feel like, certainly in the voting realm, we're just starting to see it all the time. And it's such a volatile issue that it probably is worth some additional exploration, because I don't think it's going away. Mm-hmm. Jean, did you have another thought? Or did you find
under our principles, it says, League of Women Voters believes every citizen should be protected in the right to vote. That no person or group should suffer legal, economic, or administrative discrimination. And again, lack of privacy is a discriminatory thing. I think we could go under that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, thank you for pointing both of those out. Like I said, I don't think it's an issue that's going away, and it definitely seems like it's been rather prominent of a concern this session. So I think it's good to, have a group discussion about how we phrase and hang our support around that.
So since this is a little tricky using these extended positions, I don't think it's a huge problem, but certainly privacy has been one of our things that we've worked on over the years. I think maybe a study or something. Plus, this only takes care of privacy. It doesn't take care of some of the other issues around use of technology.
Yeah.
I think it would be good to do something that, I mean, like we did with voting methods, in taking something to the national level, to work on a committee that formulates something first for the state of Colorado, and then that we could take forward, because this is going to be really central to voting. That in redistricting both. And that's the other thing I don't know quite how to handle, Tony, is the 250 is a huge bill. And I don't think anybody's really read it in detail that are path, I shouldn't say anybody, but I doubt that all of the legislators voting on that kind of huge bill have read it in detail. And it's tricky to go through and find the different pieces that might be of concern.
Ma, did you have a comment or a question?
I think Oregon has done a cybersecurity study.
That'd be a good place to start.
So if we don't need to reinvent the wheel,
absolutely,
I can go look for it and put it in the chat.
Why don't let's see. Yeah, go ahead and do that. And we could pilfer that as well.
Absolutely.
And, see if we agree with it.
County League is on that Oregon group, or has been part of that Oregon group, I think.
What was the first part of your statement?
We didn't get the first part of that.
Neil McBurnett from the Boulder County League has been to at least one or two of the Oregon group's meetings on cybersecurity.
Okay.
He should know, he should be on their email list. He should be getting all that. Gaithia, you want to check with Neil?
Sure.
Okay.
And Celeste, we just did 1071 and I reported I haven't heard back from Fenberg about finance yet. The amendment, a potential amendment.
Okay. Glad you asked.
Well, it didn't do me any good, but we'll see. I'll follow through.
Not yet, but
I just posted the link to the Oregon, I think the study and their position.
Oh, great. Thank you, Maud.
Okay. Well, what is the procedure for forming a committee, Tony? Maybe we should.
Well, unfortunately, you're supposed to, if you're going to do a program or a recommendation for a study, we should have done it a couple of months ago, but we could put this under emergency procedure and see if we can get it through that way.
Oh, at the state convention?
Yes.
Okay. Well, Maud, are you up for looking into that? Or Celeste? And I can ask Neil.
I'm not trying to add anything to my read right now.
Oregon.
Okay.
So, I mean, I think what we would do probably is look at the Oregon position, see if it covers all the things we want it to cover, see if we agree with it, and we could concur with their position, but we will still have to spend some time to see how it applies to Colorado.
Okay, so it sounds like Gaithia and Maud, are you gonna do the review on that and see what our next steps might need to be? Okay.
Sounds good to me.
And how soon is state?
2 weeks.
Next Saturday.
Okay.
The 21st.
Okay, I know what
no rush.
Okay.
It's kind of a crazy time of year, to say the least.
Do you want me to help out by putting together why this is an emergency situation?
That would be wonderful, Tony. Thank you.
Anything more on that, Tony, or is there anything else that we should discuss on that one?
I'm not thinking of something. I think for now we can go ahead with the privacy part of it and then see what else we need to address.
Okay. All right. Celeste, did you have additional updates? You popped in with perfect timing, right as we were discussing elections and voting. I'm not sure if you have other updates or new information that you want to share.
Did you all talk about the veto?
No, I was actually just getting ready to raise that because it is not something that we have discussed with LAC as a broad group yet. Do you want to dive in on that, Celeste? I'm happy to chime in as needed.
Sure. You all have talked with us about the lieutenant governor candidate bill, where it would allow somebody to run for lieutenant governor and another position. It passed with overwhelming majorities in the House and in the Senate. The governor vetoed it. The governor contacted us because we were the only group that came out in opposition. There were only about 6 lobbyists following it. Everybody else was monitoring it. We came out in opposition on Friday. The governor wrote a letter and signed the bill with, you know, how does it go? Not like disapproved. He wrote dis in front of approved and vetoed, and then wrote the date and the time, and then he vetoed it. I'd never seen a vetoed bill, so that was sort of fun to look at. It has been brought back to the House for a vote on the floor. It is every day, it's the very last item on the agenda, so it's been laid over every day. So I don't know if some of the Democrats, for instance, might decide to support the governor on this or what. It's kind of interesting to follow it, but that's the very first veto of this session. Maybe it's the only one so far. I thought the league folks would be interested in knowing about that.
And I'm happy to send the veto letter through email to LAC if everyone wants to take a look at that. But it was very nice that they did specifically reach out and asked us for input that the governor could take into consideration as he was making the decision to veto. So we kind of scrambled, put something, we basically captured our position and the concerns that, you know, have been discussed along the way, sent those along, and we're pleased to see that. So go ahead.
So just to show the importance of following the process all the way through, several years ago, there was a piece of legislation that we wanted. It passed the legislature, it got to the governor's office, the governor vetoed the bill. But part of the veto process is to send the letter to the Secretary of State. Somebody neglected to send the letter to the Secretary of State, so that bill was not vetoed. So, and I was happy, but anyhow, following all the details and knowing the rules can be pretty important.
Has this bill been sent to the Secretary, the veto letter been sent to the Secretary of State, do you know?
I don't know, but I'm gonna check now. I'm putting it with big star.
Yeah, it has, and he sadly did not mention the league in his letter.
Yeah, in the letter itself, no. But Beth, you're able to see that it had not been sent to the Secretary of State?
I just saw a veto letter, and I don't actually know if it has been sent to the Secretary of State.
Yeah, I think it could be problematic for the governor to mention a partisan, not a partisan, a politically affiliated group, you know, so if I were the governor, I wouldn't mention any groups by name either, but using their arguments is fine. We'll take it.
I'll do some checking. I may just, I'll see what I can find out and provide an update, but I'll also send the letter around so everyone can take a look at that. And it went out in a press release as well, obviously, but I'll be sure to get that out.
The other bill that we were following very closely was the SB 188, the electronic ballot return for voters with disabilities. That got amended to be only for a print disability. It has passed both houses. We call this a victory. And I have not heard anything from the governor, but I presume the governor will sign it.
Yeah, I haven't heard any concerns that he would not. I know when we discussed the bill last meeting, we also talked about reaching out to the sponsors and sending thank you notes, which I did. So just to let everybody know that. But yeah, the voting and elections team worked hard for this change in the bill. And it was fantastic that it was really emphasized to us that our concerns were heard, and in the end, they were actually incorporated, even though there were many times along the way we didn't think that was going to be the case. So fantastic job to the voting and elections team.
Two other bills real quick. House Bill 1047, drawing county commissioner districts using an independent process, has been signed by the governor. If you live in Arapahoe, El Paso, I think, and one other county, then in the future, your county commissioner districts will be drawn using a new process that's supposed to reduce gerrymandering. Speaking of redistricting, Tony may want to talk about SB 247, which is adjusting redistricting commission procedures because of the census delay. And I think it's an election kind of bill, but Tony, I think, has been the main person on that, right, Tony?
Right. Do you want me to go ahead, Andrea?
Sure, yes, please go ahead.
247 has been passed, signed. The interesting thing at the moment is that there was a House joint resolution that was sent to the Supreme Court. It's an interrogatory, and the Supreme Court will hear this interrogatory on Monday, and we can listen in if we wish. I was wondering if we should be sending a letter to the Supreme Court, but this has so much support and it needs to be done quickly. I think it's probably okay and not in danger. I'm hoping that that's true, but those dates have to be changed in order to comply, or at least acknowledged by the Supreme Court that there are situations beyond our ability to cope with them as things are now. And so we really need to change the dates for when we do what in the redistricting process. Just as a couple of sides, there are two different groups that are working on specific pieces, and there's no real definition in the legislation for competitiveness. And so all kinds of statisticians and people who like numbers are working on how you frame and how you decide what it really means to be competitive. So it's pretty interesting, and I've been following it. And so there'll be more things like that as we go along, because there are details that those of us who worked on it, Jean, didn't really think it was going to be quite that complicated, or at least I didn't think it was going to be quite that complicated. So
I remember the discussions we had about competitiveness and how we were trying to define it and couldn't come up with it, and so decided to just let somebody else do it. It's interesting that it's happening. I still like the formula that I can't remember which state it was brought to the Supreme Court, and they said, well, there might be other formulas, and turned it down. But I think that it's a can of worms, and I'm glad it's the last thing that they have to look at.
Yeah, and it definitely is. I mean, it's just incredibly complicated, and there are all kinds of ways you can do this. And the project that Colorado College is doing, they ran 1 million different scenarios to see how you can decide what competitiveness is.
So I was, just to clarify, Tony, my understanding is that it's passed the Senate. Before it's heard in the House, they're waiting for the Supreme Court interrogatory.
I don't know that I would frame it that way.
Okay, but it hasn't.
They've already set the interrogatories to the, yeah.
But it passed the
Supreme
House.
Court.
It's not going. Yeah. It's not going to be heard in the House until a couple days from now. Like it could have been heard. Normally, it would have been heard the next day, basically. But they're taking their time, and I'm guessing it's because they're waiting to hear back from the Supreme Court. But it passed.
That could well be.
Yeah, it passed unanimously in the Senate. One person excused.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so it's moving along. I don't have any fears that they won't pass it. So,
Tony, do you think we should put together a quick letter and send? I know we had kind of talked about like ways to weigh in. Do you think we should maybe do that this afternoon, or are you not?
Well, I think at this point that it probably isn't necessary.
Okay.
And I did talk to a couple of my friends who worked on Y and Z, and I couldn't get any traction with them to do it, so.
Okay. All right, well, thank you for the update on that. Are there any other voting in elections or redistricting questions, discussion, anything else we should discuss before we move on? All right.
Covered the highlights.
What's that, Celeste?
I think we've covered the highlights.
Yes, I think so.
Unless you want us to keep talking, but I think we could be done.
Yeah, no, that's probably good. The people at the bottom of the alphabet on our bill list will probably be happy if we just stick to the highlights. Okay, let's shift to energy and environment.
Well, I just unmuted. I'm going to warn you, it's Amy. I did get a message that said my internet connection is unstable. So if I get, turned off, it's not me, it's my computer. Yeah, so let's just do some updates real quick. SB 246, all of my bills are ones that we supported, and they're all moving along. So 246, electric utilities promote beneficial electrification, was heard May 11th, had its second reading in the Senate, and it passed 4-3 as amended. It passed third reading, 21-13 vote. So it got, let me see, introduced in the House and assigned to the Energy on May 12th. So everything's going really quick. HB 1286, energy performance for buildings. The bill was heard on May 6th in the House Energy and Environment Committee and passed 8-4 vote, assigned to Finance for a May 17th hearing. SB 108, Public Utilities Commission, Gas Utilities Safety Inspection Authority, Senator Story's bill, passed third reading, May 7th, on a 19-15, one excused vote, introduced in the House on May 10th and assigned to Energy for a May 20th, Energy and Environment for a May 20th hearing. HB 1269, PUC Study of Community Choice by Edie Hootens and her team, is in appropriations, and it will be heard May 14th, today. HB 1238, PUC Modernized Gas Utility Demand Side Management Standards, introduced into the Senate, so it got out of the House, which I reported on before. And so on May 10th, it was assigned to the Senate Transportation and Energy Committee, scheduled for a May 18th hearing. HB 1162, management of plastics, passed out of the House on May 5th with no amendments on a 40-23 to excused vote. Introduced in the Senate and assigned to State Veterans Military Affairs on May 10th. There is a May 18th hearing scheduled. So now I have a new bill. And this one's HB 1303, Global Warming Potential for Public Project Materials. Representative McLachlan, Burnett, and Senator Hansen are the sponsors. The bill was introduced on May 5th and assigned to the House Energy and Environment Committee. I'm asking for a support. It is scheduled for a May 20th hearing. This bill is about buying the Clean Colorado Act, and it's in two parts, with the same goal of limiting the global warming potential of certain construction materials being achieved by both the Department of Personnel and the Department of Transportation. This goal will be achieved at no additional cost due to the competitive bidding process in acquiring contracts. So the first part is about buildings and the projects. The Department of Personnel will establish policies regarding the maximum global warming potential at industry average for eligible material used to construct government public projects, but that does not include roads, highways, and bridges. It's just for buildings by January of 2024 and will be reviewed every 4 years. So they're specifying different products such as asphalt, cement, concrete, glass, post-tension steel, reinforced steel, structural steel, wood structural elements. New projects must be accompanied with environmental product declaration. There is a waiver, or I would call it a loophole, for unavailable materials on a reasonable basis for the product. In other words, if they can't get a hold of that material, they can probably substitute it. Another government agency, also another loophole, can specify the materials to be used and waive the requirement, but must report it to the Department of Personnel's Office of the State Architect. The second part is about roads, highways, and bridge projects. And this one's going to be taken care of by the Department of Transportation. By 2025, they'll establish a policy tracking and recording greenhouse gas emissions using a national or international database of environmental product declarations, resource related to road, highway, and bridge projects. The products or eligible materials are asphalt, asphalt mixtures, cement, concrete, steel. By January of 2027 and for every 4 years, the Department of Transportation will review the policy and make adjustments. There are environmental product declaration demands, again, for projects awarded next year, starting next year to 2024. I assume that they're doing that now already, but maybe they're not, I don't know. In 2026, the Department of Transportation will submit a report to the legislature. So I'm gonna quote from the bill itself because this kind of is it goes along with what we espouse about climate. Great quantities of emissions are released during the manufacture and transport of products used in public construction projects. Colorado can improve environmental outcomes and accelerate necessary greenhouse gas reductions to protect public health, the environment, and conserve a livable climate by incorporating emissions information from throughout the supply chain and product life cycle into procurement decisions. And using that information help direct expenditure. It will acknowledge companies that have invested in emission reduction technologies and will encourage other companies to take action and become more competitive in the bidding process, so says the bill. So this is a green construction bill. What do you think?
See, Maud has a question.
Go ahead, Maud.
I understand that the competitive bidding process can get the state the lowest price on a particular project, but if the bill calls, and I may not be following this quite right, if the bill's calling for some sort of green concrete that uses less emissions in its fabrication or mixing creation, but that green concrete costs 20% more than regular concrete, everyone's bid is going to be 20% higher on the concrete line. And so the cost of a project is going to, I would think, is going to be higher. So I don't quite see how it would be cost new. I'm not saying that we shouldn't support the bill, but I don't see how it would necessarily be cost neutral.
That's a good point. I agree with you that it's going to be more costly probably, or maybe it won't be. Maybe in the health effects, you know, it'll pay for itself in probably the less impacts that we cause. Do you know what I'm saying? That's all I can say about that.
Right, right. But the out-of-pocket upfront cost, I hope it could be neutral. I mean, I know that green building costs have come down considerably.
I haven't read this yet, but it seems to me, I would agree with Maud that we need to know what, some of the stuff like the green concrete is kind of a technological work in progress. It's not like it's out there yet. So we want to push in that direction as hard as we can.
That's my point, that we have to move towards that direction. And it's an effort to do that with this bill while we have the chance, while we're in there. So that's why I support this, because I think that going forward, that's what we have to do. Because when they're building anything, bridges or whatever, it impacts our communities that are front line. Mm-hmm. They're having to breathe in all the particulate matter from the construction, and even after, you know, the lifetime of the building, who knows what it emanates from there. But I know on the federal level, they're trying to do this, because I saw it in their study for legislation for building transportation infrastructure and building out whatever they're going to be making, you know, whether it's infrastructure for charging stations or whatever it takes. They have that green construction part as part of it.
Well, I'm also wondering too, I don't know, based on, you know, what we've said, that you know, the federal money coming into the state for stimulus assistance, if that's directly going to play into any of this. But I know a lot of the conversation around that money, just in a really broad sense, has been on investing in infrastructure, because there's, you know, massive amounts of money coming in, and, you know, there's concerns about sustainability, but infrastructure investments that might need to get off the ground, you know, are thought to be a good use of that funding. So I'm wondering if in some ways that this potentially falls into that category.
Well, I think so, because they're trying to, I think that most of those goals are coming from that House Select Committee on the Climate Crisis report that by the state, by the Senate and the House. So that's part of, for sure, transportation, because I did a report on that. So anyway, I don't think it's a concern, because it's going to be competitive between companies to have to show that they're putting forth their best efforts in, mitigating and bringing down the greenhouse gases. So I'm for this, and I don't know about anybody else. Anybody else have a thought about it?
Gaithia, is that a hand for a vote or a thought?
That's a hand for a comment. So I'm just now reading the bill. So the introduction says that the Department of Personnel is required to establish a maximum acceptable global warming potential for each category of eligible material to be used in certain public projects under its purview. Now, first of all, they don't even have the expertise to do that. This Department of Personnel thing came up with something else that bothered me about. But the other thing is, then they can just say anything like regular concrete is good enough for now. That's it. It doesn't seem to me, in that sense, too concerning, because it doesn't really seem to me that it would necessarily be pushing that hard. So it isn't a very stringent bill at all. I mean, there's waivers, there's, loopholes, like I said, and I found them, and other jurisdictions can change, and give an optional choice to that. So it's not a tight bill. It's really leaving it up to construction companies to actually just compete on the market. That's it, for bids. So. Well,
I said, it's a start.
Yeah,
and,
some of it just seems to be monitoring, so that you're looking at that total. And if we were actually calculating this, it's going to be really complicated. So you don't want to throw a monkey wrench into a light rail project, because it would cost shitloads of potential climate changing building materials, and then project out which is worse, having this light rail or a freeway instead, and that kind of thing. But I just want to make sure this isn't too limiting of current technology, which I don't think is there yet for cement, for example. Maud?
Excuse me, I just looked up it's the Department of Personnel and Administrative Services. So it includes the Division of Capital Assets, Capital Complex Facilities Management, and Office of the State Architect. So they do have the people who
professionals.
They do have those folks within their department. It's not just personnel, it's personnel and administration.
But they have construction people. I don't know that they have scientists.
Well,
so I'd come up with something conventional. That's what I figure, that they're just going to, for now, it would just be an exercise in data collection, which is okay with me.
Well, maybe to Amy's point too, that it's maybe a step in a much bigger picture that we eventually want to see more progress on. But
yeah, I mean, I'm okay with supporting the bill. I think it's a step, and there may not be any perfect step right now.
Anne, did I see a hand from you earlier? Did you have a comment?
No, I don't have any comment, but I agree. It's not a perfect bill, and it looks like it's just kind of laying the groundwork, perhaps, for something that'll be better in future years. That it's just a baby step towards our overall goal.
Well, I've heard a couple. Jean, go ahead.
I just wonder, what comes across to me is that this might be one of those feel-good bills. That we pass this, and then we don't have to worry about it anymore because we passed it. Even though, as Amy points out, it really doesn't have any teeth or any teeth. And I guess I'm leaning more towards monitor than support.
Well, one of the things it says is that for after 2026 and for every 4 years thereafter, the department shall review the maximum acceptable global warming potential for the category of materials and adjust the number of materials to reflect industry conditions. So, I mean, I think it's going, before you can regulate how much it costs you to build a road, you have to know all the details of what goes into that road. And that's what this is doing, is collecting that information. So I think it can be supported rather than monitoring, because it is monitoring. That's all it's doing.
Yeah, it does seem like there's some important foundational work being laid here. Well, I have heard a couple of mentions of support. Jean, you mentioned you're a little more comfortable monitor. Where is everyone else?
Support.
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 Okay, well, that sounds like we are safe to say we have a consensus around support. And then I'll get that reported. I get all the any changes in positions or new positions reported with the Secretary of State within a day or two of our meeting, within our 72-hour reporting window. So you'll see that appear soon. And then Amy, if you want to go ahead and proceed and keep us updated on this one.
Yep. Thank you, team.
Amy, was there anything else on your end, or did that take care of it?
That's it.
All right. What about you, Anne?
I have two. And the first one, I'm get my notes up here, try to stay organized. The first one is Senate Bill 261. It is a bill that is intended to encourage a renewable energy generation, distributed renewable energy generation. It wants the PUC to do some things that will facilitate this expansion. So the main objective is to increase the deployment of customer-sided renewable generation facilities. That is distributed generation of electricity. And this, you'll hear different terms. It's called distributed energy. It's called distributed generation. It's called DER. And so all of those terms pretty much mean the same thing. So mainly this is focused on solar panels on individual premises, businesses or residences. And they want to, and that's what the PUC now has regulations for. They want to expand that definition to include also electric storage, i.e. batteries that you would charge up and keep in reserve at your home, and and electric vehicles, which can also be storage, and other controllable devices that have controllable loads like electric water heaters. And just for some more definitions, household solar installations are called behind the meter solar. So as opposed to a solar garden, which is handled in a different way. The current law allows public utilities to purchase excess energy generated from renewable sources. For example, solar panels, and this is the net metering concept. And so any energy that you produce in excess of what you are using you can be credited for that on your bill. What this is going to do several things to help encourage and expand distributed energy generation. First of all, there's currently a size limit on solar installations. That is 120% of the customer's historical usage. And that is just, is considered just an arbitrary limit, probably imposed by the utilities. And it's unrealistic because our electric demand, our electric load in dwellings is going up particularly for charging electric vehicles. So the bill would increase, take out that percentage proportion and increase the maximum size that's now 500 kilowatts up to a megawatt. As it includes renewable energy storage to be credited back to the consumer, the customer. And also it allows monthly credits to be carried forward indefinitely, as long as the credits are used on property that's owned by the same bill payer, and it's within the same service territory. It also, the bill removes some regulatory limitations, particularly on the definition of a master meter operator. Now, what that is if you own an apartment building or a mobile home park, there may be a single meter that is measuring the electric usage for all of the units in those two areas. And this allows, and there's a waiver in the current regulations so that the master meter operator can charge the recipients of the electricity at a rate that's equivalent to what they would be paying if they were buying it as individuals. They can charge that, and they are not defined as a public utility, so they don't get regulated in that same way. The bill requires that the master meter operator not charge end users more than they would if the user had been served by the regular utility. And it allows pooling of all of the newly defined distributed energy resources under the master meter and allocation of credits among all the customers. I listened to the hearing that was yesterday. It was really, there was a lot of support for this. Even the quote opponents really seemed to be seeking information, but they didn't seem to be opposed to the concept. Although there were a couple that voted against it in the committee. The bill essentially expands renewable energy resources that are eligible for credits, removes the artificial limit on RE capacity, system capacity, and facilitates regulatory and technological pathways for extending renewable energy credits to more customers. There's some other allowing some devices that assist with this aggregation and distribution, but I won't spend time talking about that. It was pretty, they talked about it a little bit. So the League supports our predominant reliance on renewable energy resources, and this bill would help to expand that. So I would ask for support.
Thanks for all the information on that, Anne. That's really
helpful. Taking notes, I'm sure.
I see a couple of votes of support already. Are there questions? This looks like okay, this is clear.
Yeah, I want to support, but I'm interested in the bill number.
Oh, sorry, 261. So it did pass the committee. It's going to the committee of the whole. It seems like there was very little opposition among the witnesses. It seems to be a well-supported bill. So.
All right, well, thank you.
Okay, now the other one.
Recorded there. Okay, go ahead, and you had another one as well?
Yes, the other one is 264, Senate Bill 264. And this is a reiteration of, or similar to, an earlier bill that I presented earlier in the session, which was, you don't have to write this down, but it was Senate Bill 161. It was postponed indefinitely at the request of the sponsor without even a hearing, because they got a lot of feedback or apparently negative from stakeholders. And what this is is to reduce the title of the bill, or the short title, is to adopt programs to reduce greenhouse gas emissions from gas distribution utilities. So this is not gas production. This is not oil and gas production. This is taking the produced gas, the fossil methane, and distributing it to end users, retail customers. And the retail customers can be residential, they can be business, or it can be industry. And the main thing that is good about this bill is that it requires the utilities to file a clean heat plan with the PUC, the Public Utilities Commission. And it also involves the Air Quality Control Commission. So what's wrong with this bill? Amy and I've exchanged some emails a little bit about this. So the bill itself has some targets, some goals for reducing greenhouse gases that at first read just don't make any sense, because they're a fraction of what we have become accustomed to reading in our greenhouse gas roadmap and in the earlier bill 1261 that is our climate action plan. And I suspected that in the earlier bill, I suspected that they appeared low because it's very sector specific. It's a fraction of it's a proportion of or electricity and gas distribution to the end users. And in fact, this is clarified a bit in this bill. They use a term, let's see, that the targets are to be aligned with the Colorado greenhouse gas reduction goals, reference to the earlier, the Colorado climate plan bill, at the lowest reasonable cost. Red flag. It also, the other peculiar thing about these targets is that they set the baseline at 2015 instead of 2005, which is what the climate action plan sets it for. And I suspect that this bill, I haven't heard this bill, it hasn't been heard in committee yet, so I don't know all the details. I suspect that the reason that they've set their baseline at 2015 is probably because they don't have any data, any sector-specific data on gas distribution earlier than that. So they're starting with whatever inventory data they have, and that probably apparently starts in 2015. Now they're in this clean heat plan, they're allowed to use one or a combination of options in programs by end users, the distribution system, and allowable fuels. So the end user programs are demand side management and beneficial electrification. And Amy has covered two bills recently on those two items, and those are good things. So tightening those up or expanding or promoting those are probably good things. The distribution system is aimed at leak reduction, and they want that there are already state and federal regulations for leaks in the distribution system, and this bill would only give them credit for reduction that's greater than what's already being done, and also for using new technologies that the PUC finds is cost effective and reduces greenhouse gas emissions. So those are good things. Then the bill also allows alternative fuels to replace fossil methane. And here we start to have some fun. Recovered methane processed to pipeline quality. It would be injected directly into the pipeline. So this is things like biomethane from manure digestion, from captured from municipal solid wastes, biomass pyrolysis, which is burning wood, because if you take a life cycle approach, that can be a net reduction in greenhouse gas, and wastewater treatment. And get ready for this one, pyrolysis of tires. Okay. It also allows green and blue hydrogen. Green hydrogen, good. Blue hydrogen is derived from methane. And for those of you that are not chemists, methane is CH4. So it's fossil fuel, fossil methane. You split it, you take off the hydrogen, that becomes fuel. And this process must be paired with capture of the release of carbon dioxide. No details about the capture of the carbon dioxide, but from my knowledge base, and maybe Gaithia can chime in on this, capture of carbon dioxide, so-called capture, is really a technology that's early, and it works. It works on a small scale. Whether it works on a big scale, we don't know. So that's blue hydrogen. Green hydrogen is truly clean. Coal mine methane, and that's a good thing, although it's not widely used. So I think the overall goal of then on this determining if they're allowed some offsets. The offsets are not defined. They kick the can down the road to Air Quality Control Commission to define these by rulemaking. They say that the targets have to be consistent with our overall goal of 2050 greenhouse gas reduction compared to a 2015 baseline, but there's no calculations provided in the bill. Again, they're kicking that down the road to the Air Quality Control Commission to figure that out. All in all, I think while the goal is good, that it would be that the idea of having a clean heat plan from the utilities is a very good idea. There's just so many gaps in this bill that I don't feel comfortable with where it's going right now. So I would recommend that we just monitor it, and I will try to send some emails or find out or do some additional reading and find out what some of these unknowns are, and possibly they'll get fleshed out during the hearing, but the bill is not on the calendar right now. So it's an interesting bill. It's probably in the long term, it's a worthy bill, but it's really missing a lot of, I don't have a warm fuzzy feeling about it right now. And maybe I think Amy is kind of negative on it as well from her associations. And Gaithia, I don't know if you've had a chance to look at it.
I haven't looked at this bill in particular in any detail, but there's just a lot of greenwashing going on by people who are desperate to keep some semblance of control over things that are actually going to new technologies completely. And a lot of this carbon capture business is just not going to be a practical idea.
Yeah, Iceland
and some of the methane is basically wrong, that we shouldn't be generating it in the first place.
Right. Yeah, it doesn't really, except for the demand side management aspect and the beneficial electrification, which means moving to things like heat pumps and electric water heaters. Those are good things. We definitely need to continue encouraging those, but those are being covered in other bills as well and other programs. So we don't need to depend on this bill to promote those activities. And yeah, I hadn't heard the term greenwashing, but I think that's, yeah, it's a very aspirational bill without a lot of detail in it. So I will monitor this bill and maybe come back to you after there's been a hearing and see if there's a change.
All right, thank you, Anne. That's a lot of good information, and we will wait to hear back from you on that.
Okay.
I don't know if we have additional bills in this category. I know we also wanted to return to discussion on Senate Bill 200. Oh, Maud, go ahead. Maud, you're on mute.
While we are on environment, I did want to, and energy, I did want to share something that I heard in House Appropriations Committee this morning. It was Joke Friday, and somebody wanted to know what the wind turbine said to the solar panel when they were introduced at the Renewable Energy Conference, and the wind turbine said, "I'm a big fan."
Those legislator jokes,
Okay.
they are something.
It's better than the insults.
Thank you for sharing that. All right, other bill discussion in this category. Anything else? Other than discussion on Senate Bill 200, I know we didn't close that out.
Yeah, well, SB 200, as I said, is being heard today. And also SB 260, the big transportation bill, is being heard on the floor today. So we'll check at the end of the day and see what happened.
Tony, did you have specific details on Senate Bill 200 that you wanted to bring out? Oh, you're on mute. Tony. You're muted, Tony.
Someday we'll get used to doing that. No, I just wanted to know if we should be contacting the governor.
I went back, I had one copied off, saved an article from the Colorado Sun, and what I got from just quick review of that article, he thinks it's giving too much power to the Air Quality and Control Commission to make decisions and on targeting. And also he thinks that the targets that we have in the Climate Action Plan and the Greenhouse Gas Roadmap are being met by the affected sectors without mandates. That's very optimistic.
Yeah, he seems to want to keep it voluntary. That was one of the earlier things he came up with as an objection before he just landed on the Air Quality Control Commission, which I'm more sympathetic with. But I also read something by Will Tour, his energy person, who is a Boulder County resident, and I know from way back. And I would describe Will as kind of, okay, I work for this guy, but kind of attitude in that interview. So yeah, I have some real concerns that Polis is not being strident enough on his ideas of enforcing this, because if in fact they were meeting the goals, having them be mandatory would be inconsequential, wouldn't it?
Right.
You wouldn't have to veto the bill.
Right. And there's more than that in SB 200. There's the climate justice aspect. Yeah, the article quotes some of the major conservation groups, and they're actually absolutely insulting. I mean, they insult the governor and say, "What is he thinking?"
Yeah, they had I didn't hear how it went, but there was a big demonstration supposed to be planned yesterday.
Yeah,
at the Capitol by the environmental groups. So yeah, I think I would say, Tony, that we should get an email group going back after this meeting, after today, see what happens. And that's where I thought Faith Winters might have some insight, because maybe there is something we could do to make the Air Pollution Control Commission issue go away. as long as everything's enforced.
Well, I think, I don't know that they can go away because it depends on rulemaking.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, she's quoted in the article too as being, you know, kind of, I hope we can work things out kind of quote, you know.
That's where I was wondering if something was going on with amendments behind the scenes.
I don't think so. There was an amendment to the bill, but it just was a kind of a cleanup.
Okay.
Cleanup amendment.
So what do you all think our next steps are? Gaithia, you mentioned kind of regrouping on this once we see what happens today. In terms of contacting the governor, we want to see it progress a little further and see how his position evolves. Where do you think we need to be on that?
Well, it's not at the end of the process. It has to go to the House now.
Yeah.
So there's going to be a whole another series of hearings.
Mm-hmm.
And we can certainly put our weight there.
Okay. Well, that sounds good. We will continue to weigh in on this as it moves through and see what happens. I can see if it's been addressed as part of the floor work this morning.
I know the EPA has been pretty active in our area regarding environmental problems because they've been awarding a lot of money towards projects that have been neglected by previous administrations. So I know that just this week they awarded quite a bit of money to different townships like Craig, Hinsdale, Loveland, Trinidad Aguilar, and Las Animas County. They've gotten $300,000, and then these three last ones, 1.1 million, in support of cleanups and redevelopment of properties that have been contaminated. So, I mean, this is like that, I think I mentioned before at another meeting, they call them, I forget what they call them. Anyway, they're communities that needed cleaned up, and this administration is really focusing on getting those things done. So it wouldn't hurt to get the EPA involved in any kind of issues that we may have. He's very responsive and he wants to hear from people. So that's just a suggestion.
Okay, well, thank you, Amy. And then looking at its progress this morning, it doesn't look like they've gotten that far yet. So that's still to be seen. Any other discussion on energy, environment related measures? All right, let's move along to fiscal and tax policy.
Thank you all for quick action on the Earned Income Tax Credit bill. It's being heard today upon adjournment of the House, but the House is busy beating their chests over all of the gun bills that they have on their agenda today. And the word I heard was the upon adjournment might not even be till 3 this afternoon. And I turn into a pumpkin at 3, so I may end up with written testimony. I've heard that written testimony needs to be 1,500 characters or less. Is that true?
Yes.
Okay, I will do some whittling.
You can send it in as an attachment. It doesn't have to be typed in that little box.
Okay.
Yeah, I was just thinking, I don't think I've ever run into a limit on it,
Yeah.
but
I've sent in a couple of letters and then sent them as attachments, you know, letters on league letterhead.
Okay, super, thank you. So the little typing into the little box is a 1,500 character limit, but
yeah.
An attachment, we can be a little longer. Is that?
Yeah, I've never had trouble uploading an attachment without even really knowing what the character count was. I've just never gotten that message before.
The character count is typing into the box, but how do we get a letterhead?
So we have just basically pasted a logo in there to kind of give it a letterhead look. I mentioned earlier in the conversation that I would send out the veto letter on 1092. I will send the logo file as well. So for those that don't have it and want to include that in the correspondence, you can just do like a copy and paste. And then as you save it as a PDF, it kind of has that look.
Okay. Thank you. The companion bill to the Earned Income and Child Tax Credit Bill is HB 21-1312. It is called Insurance Premium Property Sales Severance Tax. Insurance Premium Property Sales Severance Tax. And I would like permission to monitor it unless our environmental people are weighing in with both feet saying we should support. The main pieces, anybody not know what business personal property is? If you own a business, it's the stuff that can be carted away, not the real estate, not the buildings, but furniture and equipment. And there's currently an exemption for the first $7,900 of business personal property. This would increase the exemption to $50,000. And the next big piece is insurance. Insurance premium tax is 2% of premiums, except if a company maintains a home office or regional home office in this state, they pay 1%. And apparently insurance companies are opening an office, putting one person in and saying, we have a regional home office, and paying half as much tax as they would have otherwise. And so this clamps down on that, requires them to have at least 2.5% of their total domestic US workforce in Colorado, excluding agents and their staff. So really upper level sort of regional or management people. So it's trying to crack down on that. And then the severance tax limits the deductions, tax piece limits the deductions on oil and gas so that capital expenses cannot be deducted, just direct costs of getting stuff out of the ground. And then currently the first 300,000 tons of coal each quarter is exempt from property tax. And there's a 50% credit if it's underground mined. And those phase out in this bill. I'm not sure that we have league positions really on this stuff. And so I would like to permission just to monitor it, unless anybody else has strong feelings.
Tony, do you have any thoughts on monitor versus another position?
So no, I've been trying to decide on this bill. The one thing I would say is that the severance tax in Colorado is very low compared to the states around us, and that we're not really realizing the money that we could get out of that. But can we raise the severance tax? Probably not. So I think monitor right now, and we can dig into it a little bit more and then see what the testimony is.
And Mon, can you remind me of the bill number on this one?
1312, sorry about that.
Oh, no problem. Okay, any other questions or discussion on that one? Okay, we will monitor that one.
And one other bill, there's a conservation easement bill that I'm a little skeptical on. It was just voted out of House Appropriations unanimously, and we're currently monitor. I will dig into some of its implications a little more before thinking about asking for any change in position. So I need to do a little research on that one. So,
okay.
yeah. Tony, do you have anything else? Okay, we're done.
All right, well, thank you. That takes us to gun safety. Jean.
There. Always forget. The bills that we talked about way early in the session have all passed, and I think most of them have been signed by the governor. And then we have it sounds horrible to say, but because of the horrible shooting in Boulder, we have the opportunity to pass a bunch more. I'll go through them just real quickly. We have local regulations of firearms. And this has to do with the court case that happened against Boulder in the Supreme Court, Colorado Supreme Court. Just about 10 days before that, or maybe less than a week, I think it was, before the shooting occurred. And they had a regulation, and I don't think actually it would have prevented anything, because the gentleman, the person who shot people, bought his gun elsewhere. But even so, it did outlaw certain guns, et cetera, and it was their own personal regulation. And the Supreme Court said the municipalities don't have that right. Local regulation would confer upon any local government the right to make gun regulations that were more stringent than the state. It also addresses preemptive language in the concealed carry laws, and it would allow colleges, universities, and museums to have their own rules. I have mixed feelings about this. I'm going to ask for a support, but I have to say that we have all along been pushing for national laws, so we don't have people being able to go across borders and have to follow different laws in each place, and that we wouldn't and actually be able to go to the next town and buy the gun that you want and then come back to your own town. But as a way of solidarity with all the other organizations that are pushing for gun safety, and also as a way of a little bit is better than none, I would ask for support on this. I forgot to mention this is Senate Bill 256.
Jean, I was thinking that we had done an email vote on the three newer ones that came out.
I think we did.
Okay.
And then the other two that I think we also included on that were House Bill 1298, expanding background checks. And this one I just love, because it says that people who have been convicted of a misdemeanor that included violence, especially if it included firearms, are also going to be on the background check for at least 5 years. So many people who are charged originally with a felony have it pled down to a misdemeanor, and it's still the same crime, and I think they should not be able to buy new guns. 1299, and it's I should say all of these are just moving lickety split right through the process. Establishing the Office of Gun Violence Prevention. This is a really good bill. This would allow, first of all, it establishes an office, then it would allow the state to do research on gun violence and gun safety and what things work and all that kind of stuff, which the federal government is not allowed to finance at all because of laws that were passed a while back. So I really like this. I had to say that Representative Sullivan stated, "This is how you build hope. Without dreams, all you have are nightmares." And I liked that. One of the odd things is that Representative Mary Bradford from Colorado Springs said that she was surprised this was not already being done. She was encouraged by the monies going into community intervention. She then stated that she would be a yes on the bill, but alarmed colleagues that I won't name the party of apparently sprang into action, and within 5 minutes, she said she'd be voting no. So there you go. There were a number of, in committee, a number of amendments offered that they didn't accept. And as I said, it's moving right along. So we're real pleased with the progress this year.
Well, great. Thank you for those updates, Jean. It is exciting to see all of that move along. Is there any discussion or questions around that? Okay, let's see. That takes us down to, let's see, we've already, is there any other healthcare discussion, or did we get all that with Carol's update at the beginning? Okay. Tony, any higher ed updates or activity?
Updates. The in-state tuition bill for Americans who are natives who are attached to a tribe that was located in Colorado has been signed by the governor, and that's 1210. The grant for displaced workers is in-house education. Its number is 232, and it's going to be heard in committee on May 19th.
Fantastic. Okay, thank you for those updates. Any discussion or questions there? Okay, I think that takes us to housing now.
Okay, you're back, Kathy.
I'm back. Why don't you go ahead with yours?
Okay. House Bill 1009, which is the Update Division Housing Functions and Local Development, has been sent to the governor. And my question is, how do you track if the governor has signed it or not?
Eventually, once he signs, Joe, you'll see it. If you track, you'll see the status change with the bill status update in Capitol Watch. And you can also check it on the General Assembly site when you're looking at bill history. It'll explain the date that it was sent. And then once he signs it, it'll give you the date signed. And okay. Capitol Watch will include that same information once it's updated through the status. So you just kind of have to keep an eye out for it.
House Bill 1028 was referred unamended to appropriations. It's a very small number on the amount on the bill. It's only 18,000. So, or actually with central appropriations, it's 23,315. So I would assume that it will pass on through. 1028 is an annual public report on affordable housing. So I'm expecting that to just move on through. On House Bill 1274, there is a hearing at 2 o'clock today in the Senate State Veterans and Military Affairs Committee. So we'll see. But it passed through the House on the third reading with no amendments. So hopefully that one will go on through. And 1274 was unused state-owned real property and for beneficial use. And then the last one was Senate Bill 018. There's a hearing today at 1:30 in the House Public and Behavioral Health and Housing Services. So with the two hearings today, things are going along. And that's it on my bills. Kathy?
Trish, do you have anything?
Yes, I do. Let me get myself going here. Just updates on the two that I've been following. The first one is House Bill 1134. And like Maud, I heard some of the corny jokes this morning in the appropriation session. But 1134 passed out of the Appropriations Committee this morning on a vote of 9-1. I didn't get to hear who the opposition was because the vote count and their voices were cutting in and out. So, uh-oh, did I freeze?
Oh, your video did, but you're still coming through.
My voice, okay. All right, so that one has come out of appropriations, and that was the reporting of the tenant rent payment to the credit agencies. And it's a pilot program. So the good news about that is it will allow tenants from underrepresented groups in diverse areas of the state to report their rent payments to credit agencies, allowing them to build credit without incurring additional debt. So my question is, once things come out of appropriations, is that a sign that they are then on their way to the governor's desk?
No, they'll still have to, they'll still need to go through the full process. They'll go back for second reading, third reading, they'll be finalized that way. And then if there's amendments, those will have to be reconciled. So it still will have a fair bit of road ahead of it, and it varies a little bit depending on what happened with the bill. But yeah, no, appropriations is just one step in the bigger process.
All right, thank you. And then the other bill that I've been following is Senate Bill 242, which are the housing development grants that would allow local governments, well, it went to the local governments, and it advanced out of that committee on this past Tuesday, and it is now on its way to Senate appropriations. And that would allow DOLA to use housing development grant fund money for rental assistance. And I think the big piece of that is to purchase underutilized hotels, motels, or properties. And I just read this week where the city of Denver is planning to purchase a hotel and renovate it that would provide supportive housing for the homeless, a 2-year project. So the $15 million that they're asking for in that program would help with that project. I think I read where it would be a $7.8 million project. And when I listened to the hearing, some of the concerns with that project or with the purchasing of any of these properties is that it's not only the purchase of those properties, but they also have to take into consideration all of the other expenses that are going to be involved in operating that property. Another concern, negative, was that they feel, the opposition felt that there are enough community groups out there and churches who are providing these services for the homeless, and why does government need to get involved and grow bigger? And probably the biggest concern is the fact that that's $15 million. Is that going to spread out across Colorado into the rural areas and not just be utilized in the big urban centers? So it'll be something to watch, but it is on its way to the Senate appropriations at this time. And those are my two.
Thank you, Trish. It's astounding to me that anybody actually who has eyes can say that the issue's being adequately taken care of. Government doesn't need to step in.
Exactly, yes.
Oh, that's amazing. Sorry, I'm editorializing, but thank you for those updates. Kathy.
Hi. So I know I've been saying this every time we meet, but we're still expecting a COVID-related housing bill. And I think it's still being expected, but I think maybe they're waiting so they're not bumping up against some of these other housing bills, but they're going to be running out of time. But that will be Reps Woodrow and Gonzalez Gutierrez as sponsors once it appears. The big Rights and Residential Lease Agreements Bill, Senate Bill 173, had a 6-hour hearing last night that ended at midnight. There were like over 100 people, I think, who testified. And it's going to be an interesting process, but they laid it over for action, so we'll see what happens. But it was quite the hearing last night. House Bill 1117, which is the inclusionary zoning bill, is on the way to Governor Polis for his signature, and pretty for sure that he'll sign that because he basically forced an amendment on it that says that in order to be able to use the inclusionary zoning, a local government needs to demonstrate that they've tried to increase density in their jurisdiction. So it doesn't really say who's going to decide and how that's going to work. So I think it's going to be a difficult situation when cities try to adopt the inclusionary zoning about how that's going to be evaluated. But we'll just see how that plays out. But it's pretty much a done deal at this point. House Bill 1121, which is the DOLA tenancy procedures bill that got pretty gutted in its first hearing, was scheduled for this morning for second reading in the Senate, and it's been laid over till next week. So don't know really what's going to happen with that at this point. And then House Bill 1271, which is the DOLA housing strategies to incentivize local governments with affordable housing. It's a grant program, $13 million over 3 years in forms of state assistance for local governments to promote innovative solutions to developing affordable housing. And they have a menu of things that governments can adopt to do that in exchange for getting funding for to put towards barriers that are in the way of getting affordable housing. It's a pretty cool bill. It's moving through the system. It's passed the House, it passed the Senate Committee on Local Government, and it's currently in Senate Appropriations, but it's part of the state money that they found that they had extra funding. So I think the funding's pretty much a done deal. So we'll just see what happens after it goes to the Senate floor, but it's been moving pretty well. And that's, I think, it.
All right, thanks, Kathy. Any questions or discussion? All right, well, thank you all for that update. I know there's a lot going on in housing. Our next area is immigration. Peggy was not able to join us today, but she sent along an update and has entered that information into Capital Watch. So if anybody wants to check that out, that should be up to date, and then we'll pick up with her when she joins us next time around. Income support. Debbie, do you have any updates for us?
Well, yes, the two bills I was following, Senate Bill 27 for emergency supplies for Colorado babies and families, the diaper bill, and also Senate Bill 148, creation of Financial Empowerment Office. Both have passed the Senate, are now being heard in House committees next week. So they both passed on party line vote, except one exception. There was Senator Priola voted, a Republican voted for the creation of the Financial Empowerment Office. There, you may have seen news about the diaper bill. There was a long, extensive discussion. And the Republicans were sort of made fun of because they were complaining about the possibility of reselling the diapers. People might go and pick up diapers and resell them. But I think, and then there was discussion about the procurement office, the fact that during the first year of the bill, it will not require any procurement office. I thought the comparison of distributing diapers to food at food banks was a good comparison and probably helpful there. But after a year, the procurement office rules will apply. And does anyone have any questions about these two bills? We are supporting both. So I assume that the diaper bill may pass. I don't know about the creation of Financial Empowerment Office.
And I think there was a corresponding Diaper Drive, right? I thought I had heard that the sponsors sponsored a Diaper Drive.
What did you say, Andrea?
I think there was a Diaper Drive at the Capitol, right?
I missed that then. But yeah, no.
I collect a lot of supplies or not, but I think they were kind of trying to heighten the publicity around it. And
that's very good. Yeah, well, they are cluing into this National Diaper Organization. It's National Diaper Banks, of which we have about 7 in Colorado. So, and they have access to supplies at very low cost, I think. So that's what they're hoping to get the distribution through them. All those diaper banks are on more or less the Front Range area cities. So I would hope that maybe in the long term, they'll be able to expand that network. But the bill does require that a diaper bank be supplying diapers for about the past 3 years. And then there's talk about maybe, I think the bill will also help collect information about how many people are receiving them and how many are distributed and so on, that might be helpful for understanding what we need to do going forward. I was looking back, it looks like diapers, sales tax is charged on diapers. Is that correct? There was a bill a couple of years ago trying to eliminate that, which that seems to me a good move too, to not charge sales tax on diapers. And keep in mind, these diapers are not just for children. They are also for adults as well.
Oh, good. I was going to do that.
Yes.
I was going to ask about that because I'm going through quite a few diapers for my husband.
Yes, no, this is for people who need them, regardless of age. Also, another concern by someone I talked to about whether cloth diapers could be used. And yes, they are not excluded from this distribution. It's just that most people use the disposable diapers because they may be required by daycare centers, or they may not have the facilities to wash them. But it'd be interesting to find out, what cloth diapers are actually distributed.
All right, Debbie. Well, thank you for those updates. Hopefully we'll continue to see forward movement on both of those, but keep us posted. Our next category is justice system. Jeanette was not able to join us today, but she did send along an update with a specific request that we change our position on one of her bills. On Senate Bill 193, which is the Protections of Pregnant Persons bill. We had been monitoring it up to this point, but as Jeanette has continued to work on it and continue to follow the hearing and debate, she would like to see us support it. For those that may not recall offhand, this is the bill that ensures that malpractice insurance policies don't discriminate against VBAC. It increases the statute of limitations for informed consent violations. It amends the advanced directive laws so that pregnant people aren't excluded. And that's actually the portion of the bill that's become pretty controversial and the subject of a lot of the debate. Another component is that it requires facilities to meet minimum standards for care of incarcerated pregnant people. It creates a grievance process through the Colorado Civil Rights Division for mistreatment during the perinatal period. Ensures that individuals giving birth while incarcerated have adequate support in the birth room and operating room, and allows their spouse to be there. It also requires that licensed facilities have policies and procedures in place that keep the infant and birthing person together to be able to room in, is the language that the bill uses. So Jeanette noted in her summary that she feels like the bill is doing a lot of good things. There's a lot of really solid components to it. It seems that as it's moved through the process and it's gone through the hearing, the Catholic Archdiocese is one of the main objectors to this because of the advanced directive component. You know, as I mentioned, the bill repeals language that would disallow a pregnant person with a viable fetus from executing a declaration that life-sustaining procedures be withheld or withdrawn. That's the issue that they've got with it. Senator Buckner, one of the bill sponsors, stated during the hearing that she feels that the woman should have the right to make this decision. And it's been moving through the process pretty well. So just kind of wanted to give sort of a global update there, but Jeanette's formal recommendation is that we move our position from a monitor to a support. I see a thumbs up from Amy. Do others have questions, thoughts? A lot of thumbs ups. Okay, it looks like we are in agreement to do that.
I'm still concerned about the requiring malpractice providers to cover something that the American College of Obstetrics and Gynecology might disrecommend against.
I don't know if I know enough of the details about the discussion on that to say exactly. I can let Jeanette know that you have some continuing concerns over that, Maude, and have her follow up on what the deliberation around that has been.
Yeah, I know my memory is that at one point in one state, annual premiums for OBGYNs were on the order of $100,000 a year. And that was many years ago. So, and I don't think we want to price OBGYNs out of the market.
Sure. No, I think that that's a point that I believe she can probably provide some more information on, because I know that there's been a few amendments and I think that there's been some discussion around this. Like I said, I am not sure that I am up to speed enough on the details to describe that adequately, but I definitely will ask Jeanette to follow up with you so you can discuss a little bit more. And that, I mean, it's also information that I can share out with the group too. I can see if I can get some additional thoughts from her there. Barring anything there, I guess that's, you know, barring any follow-up that, you know, might need to happen there or additional discussion, are we basically in agreement to shift this to a support, or do you all want to hear additional information before we do that? It looked like previously most people were feeling comfortable with the support. Okay. All right. I will, I'll follow up with Jeanette and let her know and make sure that she gets in touch with you, Maude.
Okay, super. Thank you. Thank you much. Yeah, if that was, I mean, the rest of the bill sounds good. If that had been amended out or changed, then I have no problem with support. So thanks.
All right.
How to address that? It seems like a bigger problem with our whole medical system that when it's in the hands of private corporations, they can avoid expensive things if they want to and make it a lot of unintended consequences for the rest of us. But yeah, I don't know how to deal with that. But hopefully they've figured out enough to do it.
Yeah, it's definitely a conundrum overall. Okay, that takes us to redistricting. Tony, I think, did you have any other updates? I think we probably covered that. Okay. And Gaithia, did you have any reproductive choice updates or any activity?
Yes, the SB 009, it has made it through the Senate and is in the House Insurance Committee. Hasn't been scheduled for a hearing date yet. And
okay.
that's the one that extends reproductive care to undocumented people.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right, that takes us to transportation. I think we have a couple of things in transportation. Updates here, Kay, or?
Just some updates. The quick one is about the RTD operations bill, HB 211186. The last action on that one was the 3rd of May. It passed the third reading in the Senate with no amendments. And it says that a final act is supposed to have happened on 5/11, but but it has not been signed by the governor as yet, as far as I could tell. So it's probably on the way to his desk. So that's a good thing. It's about changing the RTD operations to reflect, I would say, equity for people. So reducing the fares in general ways. $6 for a ride on the RTD sounds like a lot for certain people. So anyway, the second one is the larger one, SB 21238. And on 5/13, it passed the third reading in the Senate with amendments. The amendments, actually, I kind of like, would be a long analysis, but basically it endorses the preferred alignment for the north section to be the Northwest Corridor B line through Boulder and Longmont. It says that right in the bill. The original bill didn't say that. It says specifically the district shall prioritize the initiation of construction and configuration of that corridor. So even in the bill, it even prioritizes it. It's a good thing. And then it tightens up requirements for board members. These are in the amendments. And it votes, let me see, I made notes here. Votes approved. To focus again on the fast tracks area, so that board members, there is at least one board member from that area, from basically the Boulder Longmont area, which is a good thing. It hadn't been specifically laid out. And then it also talks a little bit about funding, which is fine. So it's still, I love what Ann said a little while ago. She called a bill aspirational. And I think this is still an aspirational bill. It's obviously enabling legislation that has made it through the Senate. And I don't see it scheduled yet in the House, but I'm sure it will be. So it is re-engrossed right now. It's got the amendments and is ready to move on. So that's where we are with that. That's it.
Okay.
Yeah. I mentioned earlier that 260, Senate Bill 260, which is the big transportation bill, is on the floor of the Senate today. So we'll watch for that. It's a second reading, so maybe it's being amended a lot. I mean, there are parts of it that are pretty controversial. The hearing, there was like, I don't know, 15 amendments, most of which were lost. The 4 that passed were just kind of cleanup and reconciliation of language and that kind of stuff. And among those that were proposed and lost was one to strike below or strike the entire proposal for the 4 new enterprises. So that's like half the bill. And then there was another striking of a whole section, which I think has to do with the environmental impact statement. So there was a lot of very passionate opposition in the committee, but you know, the proponents won the day because they had the majority.
All right. Well, thank you for the update there. Go ahead, Maud.
So Anne, are you testifying on the bill?
If it goes through, well, it's on the floor. When it goes to the House, I definitely will prepare. I'm vaccinated. I feel confident, but I think I have to prepare for Senate Bill 200 as well. So,
okay, you saw my comment about the earmarking.
Yes, you know, I didn't. If you look at the fiscal note, I'm not sure what you mean by earmarking. Maybe we can talk offline.
Okay.
The fees, the usage fees in each of the enterprises are directly related to the business purpose of each enterprise.
Right, right. That is earmarking the fees.
Right, but so if you to call it anything else, then what it is, the business purpose of the enterprise means you'll just abolish the enterprise because it wouldn't have a purpose anymore.
Right. Yeah, we can talk off.
Yeah, I think we may be talking apples and oranges because I don't understand the depth of all that stuff. But I got a lot of additional insight, I think, reading the fiscal note. And there actually, I think, is a second fiscal note now that I haven't read yet.
All right, well, thank you too for coordinating on that. And we'll be interested to hear what comes out of this as it goes through the floor work and maybe some amendment. Okay, and then that takes us to water. Jeanette couldn't be here. She did mention that there wasn't a lot of movement on her bills, so we'll pick up with updates from her next time around. Our next meeting schedule, we'll stick with Friday again, just to kind of stick with our regular rotation. Today was supposed to be our Saturday day, but obviously because of some conflicts we had talked about moving. So 2 weeks from now, we'll meet again on Friday. I'll keep everyone updated about anything I hear about more specific adjournment time frame. Please do the same if you all hear anything. Tony, did you have anything else?
I don't think so, Andrea. Thank you.
All right. Well, I think that takes us to the end of our discussion. Thank you so much for all your work. Let me know if there is anything I can do to support or if there's any questions. I'll get our new positions and updated positions recorded. We should be good to go. So with that.
And I will email you my phone number. Do you have time to talk now?
Sure.
Okay. Yep. Super. Thank you.
So is our next meeting on the Friday, the 28th?
Yes. I didn't look specifically at the date. I think it's the 28th. Yes, Friday the 28th.
Okay.
All right. Well, have a good weekend, everyone.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.